Hi, everyone. My name is Shweta Pai, and today I've been asked to give a quick talk on financial planning and analysis and some of the big trends that I've seen and the big practices I've seen as far as automation within this field. But before I begin on that topic, I just wanted to give a quick brief background into my career. So I have been in FP&A for 20 years now. It was really my first job out of undergrad, and it has kind of stayed with me throughout my career. I have led corporate FP&A functions for different companies, most recently at a $11 billion healthcare company. Before that, I also led corporate FP&A and corporate strategy for a $3 billion manufacturing company. I've used FP&A at various points as a kind of, it's been my backbone, but it's also been a point for me to come in, and then I've straddled into operations or corporate strategy, business development, and M&A, depending on what's happening within the company. So I find FP&A to be an extremely dynamic part of the company, definitely within the finance function, but also within the larger company itself. And one of the big things that I really enjoy about FP&A that I've really, as I've gotten more and more involved, and as I've seen it across different industries, because I've been across many manufacturing, I've been in investment banks for a big part of my career. I've also gone across to pharmaceutical and telecom. So I've seen it across a lot of different entities and at different evolutionary points. I've seen it in business units and at the corporate level. And one of the things that I find really exciting about this function and the role that we tend to play as FP&A professionals has been in our role in helping shape and validate the company vision. So that's why we often get a seat at the table. And that's what is so exciting about what we do is we can use financial data or operational data, combine it with financial data to provide that, to shape a company's vision, or to really just validate, hey, are these strategic goals and objectives achievable? Can we validate them? And that's the role that FP&A plays that I find to be very exciting. One of the big things that I've always found also really interesting within FP&A is we often do three big things within our function. We are in charge of the strategic plan, typically 3, 5, 7-year plan, depending on the company, industry, et cetera. Sometimes 10-year plan, certainly in the pharmaceutical space. And then we also have our the annual budget within our purview, as well as the quarterly or monthly forecast within our purview. Now, these all are forward-looking, so a lot of people often say, well, aren't they kind of the same, or don't they get repetitive or redundant? And you know, one of the things is that I found through my experience has been that these are they're very distinct from each other, and they have very distinct roles to play within the organization. For example, the 5-year strategic plan is truly, let's just say 5-year, your long-term strategic plan is truly your vision for the company. Where do you want to be in 5 years? What are those metrics, those key metrics that you want to achieve in 5 years? Now, the interesting part becomes is when you take that strategy, and that comes from the vision, that's that shaping the vision that gets you to the strategic plan. But once you get to that vision and say it's 5 years, and you say, okay, here's where I need to be in 5 years, what does that mean for year 4? Where do I need to be in year 4 in order to be there in year 5, to be where what your strategic goals are? What does that mean for year three? Are there significant investments you need to make in this year in order to reap the benefits over the next 2 years? Or maybe it's required in year two. What does that look like? What kind of investment? How are you going to actually implement that? What are some of the decisions that you need in order to have that investment being made in year two so that you can see the benefit in year five? What are those decisions to looking like? What are those actions looking like? And then if you were making that decision here for that investment, what's your roadmap for the next coming year? What does that look like in order for you to be prepared for this investment? Do you need to have a certain amount of cash here? So you start to see how they're interconnected, but they're very distinct. Now, the key difference between the strategic plan and the annual plan is not just that this is the 5-year view, this is the 1-year view, but this is your strategic vision shape. This is your roadmap for the next year to get you to the targets that you've set that will achieve that 5-year strategic plan. And now forecast, and a lot of times people think forecast is interchangeable with your annual budget because it's over the same period of time. But the forecast often, it leads from a FP&A perspective, often have a completely different reason for existence. The forecasts are truly predictive. So if the strategic plan is where you want to be, so this is the broad vision. The budget is your roadmap on how to get to that final destination, and then your forecast is truly your predictive a tool to say, how are you doing? Are you actually going the way? Are you steering the ship? You made a right turn instead of left. Is that now getting you to that same target that you needed to get to? So they're all interconnected. They all have to be interconnected, but they each play a very unique and distinct role within the company. And that's really, it's these three the functions and these three processes that we run that really drives a lot of the decisions that a lot of the leaders end up making using financial metrics. And that's what I find interesting. Now, because of these very different forward-looking processes, a lot of times it also bears a lot of risk involved, and a lot of the risk on the analytics and on the data itself is what FP&A really starts to really run. And this is one of the key areas where something like automation that we're seeing coming downstream is going to be really radically different and help us become better FP&A professionals and run this process, run this function better for the company. So what is this? What are these key trends that I'm seeing, the best practices that I'm seeing that applies when it comes to automation for FP&A? One of the first ones that I've noticed has been around data integration and system integration. Now, what do we mean by that? And hasn't that existed for a while? Yes, and it has. But what we're really talking about, as anybody within FP&A will tell you, FP&A is a receiver of data, which we then normalize and analyze, normalize for any weird things that may be happening, one-off events that we know about, or different accounting treatments. If you're a global company, there may be different GAAP treatments that we know about that we need to now normalize in order to look at everything as apples to apples. So our first and biggest time-consuming process is often that first step, gathering the data, Having that to be done in a timely and accurate manner, which in itself, as anybody who's gathered data from 60 some odd locations, I have for many of my companies, knows that can be very time consuming just by itself. So we have to capture data. Some of it can be extremely disparate, and then we have to normalize it. Look at it in some kind of a standardized way. Oftentimes, we also have to look at operational data, bring that in order to tie financial data to operational drivers, and really because your decisions are not going to be made necessarily on the line items, on how accounting and how financial line items are working out. Your decisions are going to be based on the operational drivers that are driving these financial metrics to be what they are. So we have to do that map. That all sits within FP&A. And then we have to pull out predictive analytics and all that stuff for all of our forward-looking statements. Now, as the key trend that of system integration, as everything is moving to the platforms or to the clouds, all the platforms are moving to the cloud. This is one of the biggest and most encouraging signs of automation that we're seeing, because this helps us do our jobs better, easier, faster. Once these systems start to talk to each other, which a lot of them are getting we have Workday talking directly to our Hyperion systems and vice versa, so that we can actually see all of that data. The systems can then start to normalize it right away, and then we actually get our data that we see that then feeds into our model is actually clean, and we don't have to mess with it. That in itself takes a lot of the pressure off of FP&A. So that is one big trend that I'm seeing, is system integration, all the enterprise systems, all the enterprise platforms that people are using, both for financial data as well as operational data, starting to talk to each other. That's a huge best practice and a big trend. The other thing that I'm seeing that has been really exciting has been the use of machine learning and AI in order to build predictive models that are very robust. Now, anyone in FP&A will tell you precision does not equal accuracy. That has been one of the big mantras within FP&A, and one that we have used to build a lot of our high-level strategic models. However, now that said, one big thing that we do always have a hard time with has been not just the precision, but has been the ability to tweak our assumptions on a more real-time basis. And that is really where these machine learning and predictive AI can come in and help us. We can also start to see when we have these models built. Oftentimes, predictive models have been around for as long as FP&A has been around. But one of the big things about the predictive models has been there's often one or two, maybe three drivers involved for any big line item. Now we can actually see all the drivers and actually have these models run on various different models, and we can have a risk-based approach on these many drivers. So it makes those driver-based decision support models become much more potent, much more not just accurate, but at least actionable, because your revenue is being driven by more than just one metric. It's being driven by more than just however much customer traffic you have on your website, say. There's more to it than that. These predictive machine learning models nowadays, and the ones that are being implemented, can actually do all of that detail at an account level, not just at a abbreviated high level, line item level. This has been exciting. The other thing that both of these things bring, the data integration and the machine learning AI, has been that FP&A can now run a lot of their modeling and do forecasting and even updates to their budgets, however they run it, on a much more frequent basis. This allows, and it's all fast because data is coming in. It makes it so much faster for us to turn around and analyze data. And if a predictive model is getting us 80% of the way there, we only have to mess around with 20% of the line items. That makes our turnaround be faster. And what the turnaround really does is it gives us a ability to provide support on a more real-time basis. And this is what builds that agile process, the agile FP&A system that everybody has been talking about. That frequency, doing it more often and having a quick turnaround, so you're not doing your forecast on the third week of the month because it took you so long to capture all the data, analyze it, etc. Now you have only 1 week to action anything that you learned from that exercise, which we all know happens way more than we like to admit. We can actually, the frequency and the speed can actually, and what automation is bringing to the table allows us to be much more reactive, much more and proactive, and act on anything that we're seeing right away. The fourth key trend that I personally find to be the most exciting trend has been this advent of XP&A, not just FP&A. It's this idea that we can take our methodology, the rigor, the discipline that we have developed over the course of the FP&A function being evolving, but we can take that discipline and that rigor and apply it to other parts of your enterprise, be it operations or workforce planning, HR, or marketing, whichever other functions, but we can apply that same 5-year vision plan analysis, taking of data and applying it so that we can see how it can convert into a roadmap, it can convert into predictive, it can convert into vision shaping, whatever it is, it's that rigor that we can bring into other functions within the corporation. And that is the most exciting trends that I've seen. And with that, I will open it for questions. Anybody is open to reach out to me. Please find me on LinkedIn. My name is Shweta, SHWTHA. My last name is Pai, Pai. Happy to chat and really answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.